Hello and a very warm welcome to Hockenheim for the second race of the weekend for the Alpine Europa Cup. This is the fourth race of the 2019 season, and so far this year we have had three different winners, as we have got 25 minutes plus a lap to look forward to around the 4.5 kilometre challenge, the home of the German Grand Prix, the Hockenheim circuit. As you join myself, Ben Evans, on an absolutely beautiful afternoon here in Germany. The sun beating down, but it's not too hot, and really ideal conditions to enjoy some racing. In race one yesterday, it was Jean-Baptiste Mehler who scored the victory, and he starts from pole position with Gael Castelli alongside him on the front row of the grid. On row two, we've got Matteo Herrero. There you see the orange car with the grey bumper, because Matteo, who came into the weekend as a championship leader, was involved in an incident early on, lost basically the front spoiler and various bits beneath it, and that pitched him into retirement. We have a very good looking grid of cars poised and ready for action in this championship, which always provides us with some really entertaining racing. And that siren you can hear is the 3-minute board being shown to the drivers. There's plenty of guests and VIPs here this weekend to enjoy the action of the Alpine Europa Cup. So let's have a look how they're up in full then, with Jean-Baptiste Mehler and Gael Castelli on the front row. Then Matteo Herrero and Mike Parisi, who split the wins in Nogaro at the start of the season, on row two. Marc Guillot and Jan Zimmer on row three. Then it's Vincent Beltoise and Nicolas Milan on the fourth row, with Antoine Miquel and Julien Neveu completing the top 10. Abby Eaton in the guest car in 11th, ahead of Mathieu Blaise, who is the first of the gentleman driver qualifiers, ahead of Marc Silvestre and Laurent Ergon. Then Pierre Macchi and Franck Rouzel, with Stéphane Prou to complete the field. 25 minutes plus a lap is the race duration ahead of them, as the circuit commentator says in German for us, as just a little bit of fanning of the door for Gael Castelli. It's hot for the drivers in the cockpit of these cars on the grid, because they've got no circulation going through the car. They're all, of course, in the multi-layered fireproof suits, and they just can't wait to get going. The grid for this race was set in qualifying this morning, but it's Jean-Baptiste Mehler who's been the driver, who's really had everything hooked up for him this weekend, and victorious yesterday, pole position today. But we have seen time and time again in the Alpine Europa Cup that because these cars are very nice handling, they look great fun to drive, but they don't have big spoilers that the cars can follow very closely to each other, and that produces some exciting and close racing with plenty of overtaking. So let's have a look back then at what happened yesterday. And it was Jean-Baptiste Mehler who led away as the field charged towards first corner. A little bit of rain in the very early stage of the race as Gael Castelli challenged as they went through the first corner. Several cars scattering wide, but fortunately nobody in any bother, although that was to change. With lots of dicing throughout the field. Laurent Ergon getting barged aside by Antoine Miquel as they went through turn 11. Also Matteo Herrero having a slightly wild ride. He came out of the final corner. That wasn't the worst of his disappointments. This was, with Vincent Beltoise, Abby Eaton and Herrero all coming together up at the hairpin. It was Beltoise and Herrero who came off worst. They were the ones who picked up damaged cars and were forced into retirement. Not a pretty sight at all for Matteo Herrero. Meanwhile, at the front of the field, this was pretty much the story of the race. Gael Castelli following Jean-Baptiste Mehler, as Abby Eaton lost out Laurent Ergon with that slight moment over at turn 11. But despite the race-long pursuit from Gael Castelli, there was nothing that he could do about Jean-Baptiste Mehler, so Mehler came through to take the win. Now, crucially, of course, they are the top two cars on the grid for this afternoon, so that sets us up very, very nicely for the race ahead, with then Matteo Herrero hopefully bouncing back from his disappointments of yesterday, and Mike Parisi, a winner in Nogaro, there fourth on the grid. Mark Guillot and Jan Zimmer also were good value in yesterday's race, with Guillot snatching third position very late on from Zimmer. So all the top six could figure. Vincent Beltran didn't really get to see much of because he was involved in the incident that eliminated Herrero. So lots of battles to watch for as they're behind the pace car now, just heading through the Turn 5 Parabolica. That brings them into this long back straight that culminates in the hairpin at Turn 6. They then swing through the tight right-hander, and essentially they rejoin the old Hockenheim circuit, the pre-2002 version of it, for a little bit before they peel off into the complex in front of the Mercedes Tribune, and then head back towards the Autodrome section. There is Stefan Prou, qualifying in 17th position this morning, and Prou, one of a quintet of gentleman drivers in the field, racing for the Gentleman Drivers' Trophy honours. So the track significantly rubbered in since this morning because we've had big GT cars racing, we've had Formula 3 cars, touring cars as well on track, and that means that we've got a very defined racing line. The grip levels will have changed a little bit, and that's something that the drivers will be aware of as they form up in side-by-side formation, heading into turn 11 now. So in terms of the colours to watch for, well, Jean-Baptiste Meyler, he is the royal blue machine, and then Gael Castelli, that is the predominantly yellow and white car. Matteo Herrero is the orange, white and grey machine, and Mike Parisi is the yellow, black and white car. You'd expect it will be one of those four that will lead through turn 1, but you never know. As the field run through the Sachs curve. And it is Jean-Baptiste Meyler who paces the field as the pace car runs on ahead, and Meyler keen to keep them as bunched as possible as they head into turns 15 and 16, the brace of right-handers that will feed them back through to see the gantry. When the lights on the gantry switch from red to green, then we'll be going racing for the second time this weekend in the Alpine Elf Europa Cup. So here we go then, as Jean-Baptiste Meyler runs them along the start and finish straight, looking to the gantry. Lights are still red, they go green now, and away we go. And it's a very good start from second on the grid from Castelli. Also well away is Matteo Herrero, but Jean-Baptiste Meyler's just got enough as Herrero got boxed in somewhat as they went through the first corner. Several of them scatter wide, but fortunately doesn't appear to be much contact. So it is Meyler from Gael Castelli, then up into third place. It's Mike Parisi in fourth. It's Nicolas Milan, who's come from 8th on the grid in the bright white car, as they head out of turn 2 and sprint along the back stretch for the first time. Jean-Baptiste Meyler has got Gael Castelli right with him. Also well away is Julien Neveu. He's up into 5th position. Matteo Herrero, one of the big losers here, he's down into 6th, and Mark Guillot and Jan Zimmer on row 3. Both completely jumped as contact there between Castelli and Meyler, under braking into the hairpin. And Jean-Baptiste Meyler determined to hold his ground. It's behind Matteo Herrero, bobs and weaves behind the orange car of Julien Neveu. And Herrero looks challenged to the outside line. He might go through here, indeed he does. So that's a place gained for Matteo Herrero. Vincent Beltrois also looking to make up a little bit of ground on Laurent Ergon. Possibly, yeah, a little bit of damage there to the front spoiler of Antoine Miquel's car. So that may slow him a little bit on the straights. So Laurent Ergon looks to the inside of Vincent Beltrois, Antoine Miquel to the inside of both of them. So everybody jostling for position at this stage of the race. And Antoine Miquel gets a little bit of a nudge maybe from Laurent Ergon, just slithers out wide. Ergon darts through, not a gap there though for Vincent Beltrois to pick his way past as the race leader Jean-Baptiste Meyler leads the way. Gael Castelli second, Mike Parisi third, Matteo Herrero in fourth, and we've got somebody who is in trouble. and that is Pierre Mackie, who's had a spin over at the final corner. Not particular concern to the drivers at the very front of the field as Mackie rejoins. There he is. Meanwhile, back at the front, whereas we were yesterday, Gael Castelli right with Jean-Baptiste Meyler, but he's just not all weekend been able to craft the overtaking opportunities. Abby Eaton now in car 110 draws alongside Antoine Miquel, looking to try and pick her way past. As now the challenge comes to the lead. Gael Castelli, just as we said, he's not found a way through all weekend. He does just that. Oh, and Meyler looks to fight back, draws alongside Castelli as they head down the straight towards turn 7, and Jean-Baptiste Meyler swoops across into the path of Gael Castelli, regains the lead of the race. Jean-Baptiste Meyler very happy to get his elbows out in the early stages as Marc Guillot, the bright yellow car, defends from the blue machine of Jan Zimmer, and also Julien Neveu, the orange car, is the one who lost out in all of that. Antoine Miquel, unfortunately, I think, hitting more significant troubles. He's dropped right back out of this leading group. Oh, and a huge moment for the race leader off at turn 11, and he rejoins Jean-Baptiste Meyler into second position. But all that pressure in the opening stages from Gael Castelli now putting paid to Jean-Baptiste Meyler's chances, at least for the moment, because Mike Parisi is right with him. So they swing out of turn 16 through to complete the second lap of the race, and again, Jean-Baptiste Meyler running a little bit wide. He kicks up the dust, creates a smoke screen for some of the cars behind as they then fall into line through turn 1. Good racing in the early stages as Mateo Herrero sets the fastest lap. He was the beneficiary of the towing as Marc Guillot and Jan Zimmer go side by side through turn 2. Oh, a little bit of rubbing as well between the pair of them as the car twitched sideways. The blast down the back straight, and Julien Neveu tucked into the toe as part of that scrap for 6th position. The leading quintet all trying to break away as Zimmer looks to the inside of Guillot into the hairpin, able to slip through. Julien Neveu may also fancy his chances, can't quite do it. Meanwhile, here's another look at the move that initially put Gael Castelli ahead of Jean-Baptiste Meyler. Meyler elbows his way back on track. There's another look at it, and, well, 6 1 half dozen of the other. Gael Castelli wasn't rushing to give Jean-Baptiste Meyler the room, and then Meyler just pushing a little bit too hard through turn 11, out wide, and that is what cost him. And it doesn't look any prettier from that angle, unfortunately, for Jean-Baptiste Meyler. He will be hoping to regroup and re-challenge. And here is the fight at the front of the field. So it's Gael Castelli who is taking out the pace of the race now. Meanwhile, fight for 4th and 5th, very close between Herrero and Milan. Likewise, Marc Guillot in 7th, with Julien Neveu and Laurent Ergon right behind. Antoine Miquel having to get his front spoiler reattached. Vincent Beltoise just in behind. Then we have got Abby Eaton. She's got Mathieu Blaise behind her, and Blaise is the leader in the Gentleman Drivers' Trophy. Oh, and a problem there. Oh, and quite a big problem. The front left wheel has collapsed there for Mike Parisi, and that is very unusual to see. And Parisi comes to a complete halt. We'll have hopefully get a replay of that, see exactly what's happened there for Mike Parisi, but he is going no further and is forced into retirement. And what that has served to do is split up the leading group, because now Jean-Baptiste Meyler released to pursue Gael Castelli. Mateo Herrero in 3rd has got Nicolas Milan with him, with 8.5 minutes plus lap to go. Another look at it, and just seems that under braking, the wheel tucked there on Mike Parisi. Very unfortunate for Parisi. So one of the characteristics, of course, of this championship is the cars are immaculately prepared. Now that has led to the deployment of the safety car, because Parisi is pretty proximate to the edge of the road over at turn 2. So that's going to bunch the field back up once more. the while, of course, while the safety car is out, the race clock will continue to tick on, and that's the reason why, given the length of the lap here is about 1 minute 50 seconds for the front runners, the doesn't quite give enough of a window, particularly as the car of Parisi can't be towed away. It's going to need to be loaded onto a truck to execute that safely. So the safety car it is. And Gael Castelli slows the field, waiting for the emergence of the safety car from the pit lane. And then they'll pick up and proceed round at pace. So they just completed 3.5 race laps. Got another car in trouble. That's Julien Neveu, who is pulling off at the end of the front straight. And Neveu has just pulled off to the inside of turn 1, just out of that camera angle. So Neveu, who was in 7th, also in trouble. There he is. And that is a real pity. So the second race of the weekend is starting to become a little bit attritional in the Alpine Elf Europa Cup. Lost Antoine Miquel, Mike Parisi, and now Julien Neveu. Hopefully won't be behind the safety car for too long. But these Alpine 110 cars always look great fun to drive, and of course not massively modified from the road-going version, just the usual adjustments that you'd expect for a race machine, taking out weight where possible, just some tweaks to the suspension, of course the addition of a roll cage. And this is a series that we thoroughly enjoyed last year and is going from strength to strength into 2019. So weaving around, trying to get some heat into the Michelin tyre there. Gael Castelli. Jean-Baptiste Mailer tucked behind him. So they file into turn 7. And the Gentleman Drivers' Trophy, that's Mathieu Blaise, who currently leads that from Marc Silvestre and Franck Rouxel. So no signal this time around that the safety car is going to come in at the end of this lap. It'd be at the end of the second sector, which they're through, where that would suggest that that would happen. So going to have at least one more lap behind the safety car, and that means that when we do go racing again, we're going to probably be in the region of about 12 minutes or so left on the clock. So just under 15 minutes. As the cars file their way through the final few turns on this, their 5th lap of the race. And the Hockenheim circuit, a diverse challenge for the drivers, some long, fast straights, some quick corners, but also some much slower technical sections. Getting the balance of the car right, always very tricky. And that was a 3-minute lap behind the safety car for Gael Castelli, and so we're looking possibly in the region of 11 minutes left on the clock when we get going. That's going to leave them time for probably 7 racing laps by my estimation. So this is the point of the circuit where we will see whether or not the recovery work on Mike Parisi has been completed into turn 2, as everybody just weaving as they can, trying to keep the temperature in their tyres. As the camera swings round, Parisi seems to have been moved away to a place of safety. So fingers crossed, that means we're going to get the safety car coming in at the end of this lap. Indeed so, confirmed on the timing screen. So just a 2.5 lap intervention of the safety car. And hopefully now we've got confirmation the safety car is coming in, that the pace will elevate just a little bit. Great shot, though, there of the hairpin into turn 6. You can see all the rubber that's been laid down over the course of the weekend. Also, the slight ripples in the road as all the pressure from the cars has exerted itself on the asphalt, particularly from the big Slicks and Wings cars, the GT cars. It just starts over time to ripple that surface a little bit. Also get a sense there of all the marbles that have been laid down over the course of the weekend. The track well and truly rubbered in. So the safety car in this lap, about half a lap, a little bit less to go before they come back into view. And then it'll be the responsibility of Gael Castelli to pace the field. There is Castelli arriving into turn 11. In the yellow number 15 car, the royal blue, metallic blue, number 17 is Jean-Baptiste Mella right behind him. Then Mateo Herrero up into third, and that safety car's worked very well in Herrero and Milan's favour, because the retirement Mike Preece had rather split the leading group, and now they are all bunched up together again. And here's Gael Castelli leads the field, and they're all waiting for the moment at which Castelli decides to pull the pin, which he does now, accelerating out of turn 14 into 15 and 16. He's not got a massive jump over Jean-Baptiste Mella as we go green again. Out of the final corner. Flash of the headlights from Jean-Baptiste Mella just to let Gael Castelli know that he is well and truly there. Possibly also maybe signalling if they work together, they might be able to break clear of Mateo Herrero and the rest of the field as they all bounce through turn 1. Castelli just shows himself to the inside as Jan Zimmer fends off Marc Guillot as they head through turn 2 and sprint out of 3 and 4 onto this fast back stretch. And this is a good run here for Jean-Baptiste Mella. He's up behind Gael Castelli, and Castelli having to cover the inside line as Mella looks to the outside into the hairpin. He'll then aim for the switchback, just tightening on the exit if he possibly can. As meanwhile, Jan Zimmer to the inside of Nicolas Milan. But again, no joy. More light flashing from Jean-Baptiste Mella. Don't think Gael Castelli needs any sort of reminder that he's there. As Mella thinks about a look to the inside at turn 8. Oh, they're very tight, almost bumping into each other. In fact, they possibly were. Out of 9 now, they accelerate through onto the second half of the back straight towards turn 11. And Jean-Baptiste Mella looking very feisty on this first lap of the restarted race. Anxious to find a way through. And that's possibly because Mateo Herrero is now looming large onto his tail. There is Herrero, the grey front bumper to the otherwise orange and white car. And just behind them, Nicolas Milan continuing in 4th place. So he fended off the challenge from Jan Zimmer. So they swoop through. What sort of pace has Castelli been able to set on this lap? It is a 1 minute 51.7. It's really through the first half of the lap where Jean-Baptiste Mella seems to have the legs on Gael Castelli. And again, Mella closing up, underbraking to turn 2. And he will hope, given the propulsion on towards the hairpin at turn 6, which is really the best overtaking opportunity. And Jean-Baptiste Mella again tucked up behind Gael Castelli. They accelerate through the Parabolica. Flat out curve, then into the heavy braking zone again. Gael Castelli doesn't want to leave the inside open. Mella looks to the outside, which is the more conventional racing line. Castelli, though, breaks deep. He tries to ease Mella out wide. Mella sees that coming. And the net outcome of all of that is no particular change in the order, so they're as they were. But as they head towards turn 7, Jean-Baptiste Mella looks to challenge to the outside of Gael Castelli. Castelli squeezes in, they bump into each other once more as Mella asserts for some space and reclaims the lead of the race. Takes the tight line through turn 8 towards turn 9. This is where Castelli looks to fight back. They're still side by side as they head out of turn 10. On towards turn 11, they remain side by side. They're not only overly keen to give each other racing room, and Mela had to get out of it, and that allows Mateo Herrero through. And Jean-Baptiste Mela, he just overcommitted to going side by side into turn 11, which was unlikely to work. Meanwhile, Jan Zimmer is up ahead of Nicolas Milan as well. And this is great racing from the Alpine Elf Europa Cup. The top 7 cars all really running as a continuous chain. Jean-Baptiste Mela, having looked like he was about to lead the race, now down to 3rd. And it's the turn of Mateo Herrero to take the fight. It's a huge twitch for Gael Castelli, even bigger ones for Jan Zimmer and Nicolas Milan as they run wide out of the final corner. It's going to be an almighty sort out into turn 1 as Laurent Ergon shoots to the inside. Zimmer runs out incredibly wide, still alongside Laurent Ergon. Well, the next in action in 2 weeks' time in Spa, you'd have thought this was the last race of the season, the way they're going at it. Oh, is that damage there for Zimmer? I think he may have holed something because the car seemed to be sliding on its own fluid, and Jan Zimmer slows to a crawl. Now, here is another look at the friendly tap between the erstwhile race leaders, Gael Castelli and Jean-Baptiste Mela. And then this was Castelli's moment, well held. And then further back, Zimmer and Milan. But then Jan Zimmer, something mechanically awry by the time he arrived into turn 2. But he ran so wide at turn 1 as well. Wouldn't be surprised if a piece of debris just punched a cable or a hose or something. So back to the front of the race, and Jean-Baptiste Mela is up ahead once more of Mateo Herrero. And the leading group completely detonated because we've lost Jan Zimmer. The number 8 car, Nicolas Milan, has dropped a long, long way back. This would be why. And that possibly is that game over for Milan. He's really well off course. And that seems to be running side by side with Abby Eaton. So Nicolas Milan and Jan Zimmer have both departed from the scene. Crikey, Gael Castelli and Jean-Baptiste Mela living dangerously. They are right to the edge of the circuit. They've picked up warning flags for track limits, not unsurprisingly. Mainly because they're running wide enough to high-five the marshals at certain corners at the moment, as nonetheless it's giving us a great race as Jean-Baptiste Mela climbs onto the tail of Gael Castelli once more. And this is the section of circuit which really seems to favour Jean-Baptiste Mela, as he pursues Gael Castelli once more into turn 5, feet firmly welded to the throttle at this point on the circuit. Flash of lights again from Jean-Baptiste Mela. As we were, they fan out. Mela looking for the undercut, nothing doing as they head down towards turn 7. And Gael Castelli is doing a very good job of defensive driving with all the bobbing and weaving that's going on behind him. But just look at the movement of the 15 car. He's sticking to the racing line and he's making Jean-Baptiste Mela do the hard work. 4¼ minutes plus a lap to run. They're currently on lap 10. And Jean-Baptiste Mela's got to be careful because drivers can pick up a penalty for excessive headlight flashing. And well, he's certainly doing a fair amount of it to try and fluster Gael Castelli. Castelli, though, not really too bothered. Mateo Herrero in 3rd. Not quite got the pace, though, to get onto terms with the leading group as they swing through the final corner. Again, right out to the periphery of the circuit. So through they come, 3½ minutes plus a lap left on the clock. Meanwhile, good battle going on for 6th. Vincent Beltoise just clear of Abby Eaton. And they've got Mathieu Blaise, the top gentleman driver, just behind them. While Laurent Ergon trying to pursue Marc Guillot. There is Marc in 4th position. Not quite on terms with Mateo Herrero at the moment, though. Oh, and that is a problem for Stéphane Prou, who hopefully will be able to get going. It's just on the exit of the Sachs curve, and can see the car from my window. He is back on track, fortunately, so there's not going to be any sort of last gasp delays. Another little tap there from Jean-Baptiste Meyler on Gael Castelli. And the two cars almost running as one down the straight into turn 7. Excellent race this, as again Meyler looks for the contact, tags Castelli, and he pushes Gael Castelli out wide. Now Jean-Baptiste Meyler would be advised here probably to allow Castelli back through into the lead. Gael Castelli can't do that because he rejoins with plenty of damage. And oh no, Gael Castelli is going to limp into retirement. Damage to the rear left corner of the car. It was a fairly hefty thump from Jean-Baptiste Meyler. Don't think there's anything malicious in it. This was the first of the little taps as they went through the hairpin. It was then as they went into turn 8, could see the move that Jean-Baptiste Meyler was trying to execute to jink to the inside, but then the door just closed on him, at which point Jean-Baptiste Meyler was committed, hence the contact and a very unfortunate end to the race for Gael Castelli. So now it is leading the way. Jean-Baptiste Meyler, clear of Matteo Herrero and Marc Guillot. And Jean-Baptiste Meyler looking to do the double here in Hockenheim this weekend. Be the first double victory of the season. Now this is the fight for second and third between Matteo Herrero and Marc Guillot. And when they come round at the end of this lap, it is going to be to start the last lap of the race. So running out of time here is Marc Guillot. He wants to get up into second position. Now they're coming on to terms with Franck Rouxel, I believe it is, who had that spin, as Herrero has to edge out Guillot. Marc Guillot, though, looks for the switchback and executes it very well. He has a little bit of a power slide on the exit of the hairpin, and that might just allow Matteo Herrero to regain the position. Indeed, it does. Here they come into turn 8. And Herrero just covering the inside line. He's going to slither wide here. Guillot tries to go in for the kill, but he can't quite do it. Matteo Herrero's just positioned the car where he needs to. So they head towards turn 11. Now the incident, not surprisingly, between Gael Castelli and Jean-Baptiste Meyler is under investigation. As the clock ticks down, it's going to be touch and go whether they sneak one or two more laps out of the race. This was the switchback for Marc Guillot. He just then slid as he put down the power. It wasn't quite an even transfer of power. So they are heading into the last lap of the race now. The clock has ticked to 0. And Jean-Baptiste Meyler en route. But what about the fight for the remaining 2 spots on the podium? Because Laurent Ergon has decided that this looks like fun and is looking to join in there. He is in the black and green car. So a 3-way scrap for the last 2 positions on the podium. So they accelerate out of turn 2 along the back stretch for the final time. And the Alpine Elf Europa Cup giving us some great entertainment this afternoon. Really lively race. And is there going to be one final twist to it? They're all desperately late on the brakes into the hairpin. The car's squirming underneath them, but Matteo Herrero able to retain that second position. Through turn 7, you can see the various souvenirs of the battles along the side of Marc Guillot's car. And then Laurent Ergon just behind as well. So into turn 11 for the race leader, Jean-Baptiste Meyler. The fight for second position looking, has to be said, unlikely to change. As Jean-Baptiste Meyler just a couple of corners from home now, and this has been a superb performance from Mailer, dramatic battle with Gael Castelli, and it has earned him a 30-second penalty added to his time. So Jean-Baptiste Mailer will take the checkered flag, but he will not, as it stands, win the race. He doesn't know that. It's Mateo Herrero who is effectively our race winner from Marc Guillot and Laurent Ergon, head of Vincent Beltoise and Abby Eaton. So 30-second penalty to Jean-Baptiste Mailer as he came through the final corner. It came up on our timing screen, with then Mathieu Blaise winning the Gentleman Drivers' Trophy from Marc Silvestre, and then it will be Franck Rouxel. So there you see, car 17, Jean-Baptiste Mailer, 30-second penalty. And that is going to sting when he gets round to Parc Ferme. So Mateo Herrero takes his second victory of the season, and after the disappointment of yesterday for Herrero, then this an opportunity to bounce back, help him in the championship standings. Really dramatic and entertaining race from the Alpine Elf Europa Cup. Thoroughly enjoyed that. The good news is they'll be back in a couple of weeks in Spa. So a look then at the classification. Mateo Herrero wins it from Marc Guillot. So 1-2 for Milan competition. Laurent Ergon into third. Vincent Beltoise fourth from Abby Eaton. Mathieu Blaise in sixth, winning the Gentleman Drivers' Trophy from Marc Silvestre. Jean-Baptiste Mailer in eighth on the adjusted time. Franck Rouxel completes the Gentleman Drivers' podium ahead of Pierre Macchi and Stéphane Prou. Unfortunately, Gael Castelli, Nicolas Milan, Jan Zimmer, all retirements, and the same for Julien Neveu, Mike Parisi and Antoine Miquel. Fast lap of the race to Jean-Baptiste Mailer, which he set just before the safety car came out. So Mateo Herrero will possibly be quite pleasantly surprised when he arrives into the pit lane and gets pointed in the direction of the number one board. So he flashes his headlights to thank the people watching the tribunes and the marshals. Before heading on towards Parc Ferme. It was a great scrap all the way through the race. So many different battles. And Mateo Herrero, admittedly aided a little bit by that safety car that kept him in the mix for the win as he rolls down pit lane. And he comes to a halt. Well, he moves to P2, and he's going to find out in a moment's time he's actually been judged the winner of the race, as Jean-Baptiste Mailer has gone to park up in Parc Ferme. I think only now is realising that possibly things have changed. So Mateo Herrero out of the car, enjoying the congratulations. He's also the top junior in the race. Double thumbs up. So, very exciting stuff from the Alpine Elf Europa Cup. Mateo Herrero winning from Marc Guillot and Laurent Ergon. And this is how it unfolded. As the lights changed, it was Jean-Baptiste Mailer who led the way from Gael Castelli. So they went elbow to elbow into turn one. They're all safely through, but there was plenty of battling and a little bit of contact early on between Mailer and Castelli. Both of them were pushing each other very hard. Marc Guillot and Jan Zimmer also in early scraps with Julien Neveu, as then Jean-Baptiste Mailer pushing a little bit too hard wide at turn 11. He rejoined, but that elevated into the lead. Gael Castelli just ahead of Mike Parisi. Guillot and Zimmer went at it wheel to wheel, but we lost Mike Parisi mid-race to a mechanical issue, and that was what brought out the safety car. Here we see it, the front left of the car having some sort of issue, and that forced Parisi to immediate halt right at the edge of the circuit, and he needs to go onto a flatbed truck. Once they got going again, then all bets were off. Superb three-way scrap at the front of the pack between Castelli, who somehow held that, Matteo Herrero and Jean-Baptiste Meyler, Gian Zimmer and Nicolas Milan also in the thick of the action. This then, the instant that ultimately decided the race, contact between Jean-Baptiste Meyler and Gael Castelli. Castelli out with damage, and that earned Jean-Baptiste Meyler a 30-second time penalty. So while the 17 car took the checkered flag, once 30 seconds were applied, it was the car that finished second on the road, Matteo Herrero, who took the race victory ahead of Marc Guillot and Laurent Ergon. So a very exciting race for the Alpine Elf Europa Cup. And lots for the drivers to discuss up on the rostrum. So lots for the drivers to debrief and discuss on the rostrum, and that was a very action-packed 25 minutes or so of racing. So the Alpine Elf Europa Cup continues a couple of weeks' time in Spa-Francorchamps. That promises to be another very exciting weekend. Very lively discussion, and well, if history is written by the victors, they clearly all have got very positive views of the way that the race turned out. And likewise for the gentlemen drivers as well. So congratulations being proffered. The drivers soon to come out onto the podium. All the drivers are there. So we should be getting them onto the rostrum in no time at all. The winners' caps being distributed. So they can survey the panorama of the back of the Hockenheimring paddock. So Herrera and Marc Guillot just debating with Laurent Ergon the battles that they saw going on around them. So on to the third step of the podium for Laurent Ergon, always in the thick of the action in these Alpine Elf Europa Cup races. Runner-up, then Marc Guillot. And race winner Matteo Herrero. Herrero disappointed in retirement in race one, bouncing back for the win in race two. And that is the win for Milan competition as well. So the French national anthem to salute Mateo Herrero, winner of the 4th race of the Alpine Elf Europa Cup season. So 3rd place to Laurent Ergon. Runner-up, Marc Guillot. And race winner, Mateo Herrero. So Mateo Herrero receives the winner's trophy to conclude what's been an excellent weekend of racing in the Alpine Elf Europa Cup here in Hockenheim. The series returns in 2 weeks' time in Spa-Francorchamps. So as the drivers let rip with the champagne, it's time to say thanks for joining us in Germany, and we'll see you in Belgium in a fortnight. Thank you very much. See you in Spa.
So, jetzt wird's hier feucht-fröhlich. Der Champagner ist durchgeschüttelt. Aber wir haben hier noch 2 Wertungen vorzunehmen. Wir räumen da ganz kurz auf hier auf dem Podium.